This podcast may contain explicit language. Fasten your seatbelts, it's going to be a bumpy night. All About Eve is next. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan. Hey, why the fuck do you always warn people about explicit language to start the show?
Probably for that exact reason.
Okay.
And also, it in my experience, particularly with my potty mouth and, of course, my mother's, who is the worst offender of them all, I want people to feel free to let it fly on this program here, and I certainly have times where I want to be overly expressive, and what the fudge just doesn't work. So
yeah, I know.
But tonight, for our 284th episode, we won't need to worry about too much explicit language in the decorum of the film we're discussing. It's All About Eve from 1950, celebrating its 75th anniversary. Written and directed by Joseph Mankiewicz, cinematography by Milton Krasner, music by Alfred Newman, starring Bette Davis as Margo Channing, Anne Baxter as Eve Harrington, George Sanders as Addison DeWitt, Celeste Holm as Karen Richards, Gary Merrill as Bill Sampson, Hugh Marlowe as Lloyd Richards, Thelma Ritter as Bertie Coonan, Gregory Radoff as Max Fabian, and Marilyn Monroe as Claudia Caswell. Background for the movie: All About Eve was released on October 13th, 1950. On a reported budget of $1.4 million, All About Eve would gross nearly $8.4 million to finish number 4 at the domestic box office for 1950. Eve was met with widespread critical acclaim and would garner 14 Oscar nominations, a record that has only been tied. It has never been surpassed at the history of the Oscars. Dad, what are the other two films to tie for 14 nominations?
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
No. You have one Best Picture winner, and you have a Best Picture winner for all of 3 minutes?
La La Land.
That's correct.
And
it's one of the 11 films to hold the record for highest grossing film of all time, if that helps. It involves a door.
Okay. A door.
Celine Dion.
Oh. Titanic.
There you go. So it was nominated at the Oscars for Best Actress, Anne Baxter and Bette Davis. Best Supporting Actress for Thelma Ritter and Celeste Holm. It also holds the record for most female nominations for a single film, with 4 all time. I don't think there's another film that's been nominated for more than 3 at this point. It was nominated for Best Art Direction, Black and White, Best Cinematography, Black and White for Milton Krasner, Best Film Editing, and Best Score for Alfred Newman. It won Best Picture, Best Director for Joseph Mankiewicz, Best Supporting Actor for George Sanders, Best Screenplay for Joseph L. Mankiewicz, in an era where we didn't apparently have we had Best Story and Best Screenplay, but we didn't have original versus adapted somehow. I don't know how that worked out. Best Costume Design, Black and White for Edith Head, G-Mote Hall of Famer Edith Head, I might add, and Charles Lemaire, and Best Sound Recording. The film has lived in the public consciousness for decades with many pop cultural references, homages, and other work, and a stage musical adaptation in the 1970s. The film has been recognized by the AFI on the following lists: 1998's 100 Years, 100 Movies at number 16. It was on AFI's 2003 list of 100 Heroes and Villains, with Eve Harrington as the number 23 villain of all time. It was on their 100 Years, 100 Movie Quotes, with Fasten Your Seatbelts, It's Going to Be a Bumpy Night at number 9. And in 2007, it was on their 100 Years, 100 Movies 10th Anniversary Edition at number 28. When AFI named Bette Davis number 2 on its list of the greatest female American screen legends, All About Eve was the film selected to highlight Davis's career. The Writers Guild of America has ranked the film's screenplay as the 5th greatest ever written, and in 1990, in the 2nd inaugural class of the United States National Film Registry, All About Eve was inducted. In 1997, the film received a placement on the Producers Guild of America Hall of Fame, and All About Eve currently holds a 99% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, a 98 score on Metacritic, and a 4.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which is good for number 97 overall on Letterboxd among narrative films. Of course, we can't do this all on our own, so we bring in our great celebrity guest, returning for her now third appearance on the show to date, a film critic, author, poet, podcaster, and interviewer extraordinaire. Please welcome back, Jaylan Salman.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's been almost a calendar year since you were last on with us for Saw. How have you been?
It's been up and down, but artistically, I feel really great. Personally, I don't. But I'm trying to survive. The climate hasn't been really great. The world is going crazy. There are lots of, tragic things. But artistically, I feel like I'm thriving. I published poetry for the first time in like 2 years, and I'm really happy. I will be in an anthology soon. I'm doing a lot in terms of podcasting and interviewing and even collaborating with other great cinephiles. My art life is great. Career hasn't been that great because economically, I feel like the world's collapsing. But there are two parts of me. A part of me that is really nourished, which is my artistic side, but my personal side and my career side are not really that great.
Well, we take what we can get. I know this week in particular has been particularly busy for you on your side of the world, and so we hope that all goes well and peaceful for everybody over there. Of course, not much to add in this exact moment, but all the best to have you back with us yet again. And you will be back with us in a few short weeks as well to discuss another film. But tonight, you picked All About Eve. Is there a particular reason that you wanted to be on this episode for this film?
I really wanted to discover, because there are a lot of the classics that I haven't watched yet. Like, there are many classic films I haven't visited, and all of my friends, a lot of them are like classic movie nuts. They just adore classic films. So I really wanted to explore. The ones that I would watch were the ones that I would watch with my dad or with my grandfather or, people in my life. But there are many others that I haven't even watched. So All About Eve, everyone talks about it. And I really wanted to see it. And I love the memes with Bette Davis and all of that. So I really wanted to visit that one. And I thought, well, what's a better place than the greatest movie of all time podcast? This is why I picked it.
So this is a first watch for you?
Yeah, first watch.
Okay. Well, we have a newbie in here. Dad, what is your relationship to the film?
I'm pretty sure I saw it about 15 years ago for the first time. I think I've seen it about 3 or 4 times total before this, so it's probably 4 or 5 times total.
I want to say this is another one that I crossed off because it appeared in both the AFI lists as well as the Best Picture winners list. This is one I think I crossed off in the last 10 years or so. I was astounded by how good I thought this film was whenever I first saw it. I think I watched it a second time with you somewhere along the line in the last 3, 4, 5 years. I think I also showed it to Sarah once while we were doing our film education during COVID, which was basically me selecting some old classic film to introduce to her for the first time. So I think I've seen it at least 3. This might be 4 times. And each time I think I still pull something out of it. It doesn't have quite the same effect as the first time when you figure out where everybody is. It doesn't have quite the twists and the reveals, but I still think there's so much meat on the bone here for this movie to discuss and go with. So with that, this is obviously a very famous year of the Oscars. It's a very famous movie to be discussing in concert with a film that we just revisited recently, Sunset Boulevard. Those films, as we mentioned during that revisit episode, really cannot be mentioned almost without the other. They're kind of like twins in that you talk about one, you almost have to talk about the other. But both of these films have somewhat similar themes or topics discussing the industry itself. So I guess I ask you, is this the best industry film about the industry itself? Or is there something else that you would say is like the top movie about acting or Hollywood or the industry that you'd put above either this or maybe even Sunset? I'll take either in this case.
I don't know. Maybe. I can't think of a better one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it really captures all aspects of the film industry.
For my money, I would place my bet on this being the more defining film because I think it, to me, grabs at a lot of the nuances and the cattiness between the interpersonal relationships of its primary characters, whether it's Bette Davis and feeling supplanted and the writer's room being constantly needing his own form of validation, and how all of these people kind of interact. They're friends and friendly, and they have these acquaintances, but there's always somebody ready to grab the spotlight away from you if you let it, essentially.
Yes. I think the relationship and such, and the methodology, the climbing, the social climbing, the manipulation, the use of other people to gain your rise to fame and celebrity is a true entertainment industry narrative. But I think you have the same type of thing that goes on in a lot of places, a lot of businesses, a lot of industries. I mean, just in my field, the legal industry, there are a lot of partnerships made on the backs of other associates who are not quite as aggressive.
You mean lawyers can be backstabbing?
What a
There's
surprise.
a reason why the shark was named Bruce after Spielberg's lawyer.
That is true. Maybe one of these episodes will have lawyer jokes with Dana and Tom.
Well, I've got some buttes.
Such as?
You really want me to give some?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, well, all right. So, guy's at a bar and he's trying to pick up girls and he strikes out. So he's leaving. He's going to go home dejected. And the bouncer's there. He goes, "What's the long face?" He says, "I have never had this bad luck at a bar before." Bouncer says, "Well, this is a lawyer bar. You don't score unless you're a lawyer." So he comes back the next night and he's standing at the bar. He says, he kind of sees this cute girl come up. She orders a drink. He says, "Hi, how are you doing?" She says, "Oh, good, good. What do you do for a living?" He says, "Well, I'm a lawyer." Well, one thing leads to another, and they're back at her place, and they're right in the middle, and he stops. And she goes, "Is there something wrong?" He says, "Well, I've been thinking about it. I've only been a lawyer for 60 minutes, and I'm already fucking people."
So, do you have our plot summary ready for us, Dad?
I do. You asked for it.
I did.
All About Eve is a classic drama about ambition, fame, and betrayal in the world of theater. The film stars Bette Davis as Margo Channing, a talented but aging Broadway star who begins to feel threatened by a young admirer named Eve Harrington, played by Anne Baxter. Eve appears at first to be a devoted fan, eager to help Margo with her career. Margo takes pity on her and hires her as an assistant. But over time, Margo and her friends, including her playwright friend Lloyd Richards, Hugh Marlowe, and his wife Karen, Celeste Holm, and theater critic Addison DeWitt, George Sanders, realize that Eve has bigger ambitions. She wants Margo's fame, her friends, and even her roles on stage. As Eve schemes her way to the top, Margo must face her own insecurities about aging and love, especially with her younger boyfriend, Bill Sampson, Gary Merrill. The story becomes a battle of wits and emotions, showing how ruthless ambition can destroy friendships and reputations.
Thank you, Dad. So what is this film about?
Okay, what I wrote is a social climbing bitch inserts herself in the life of a fading theater starlet. This is what it was to me.
Sure. I mean, I don't find anything wrong with that description. I had, who am I outside of my job? How do I handle an upstart trying to take my job when my work is my only identity? Fame is fleeting. There will always be someone to replace you. And show business is cutthroat and full of ambitious vipers.
Long time ago, I was studying how to improve my communication skills, be less shy type of thing, how to talk to people more, be more outgoing. And I learned a lesson where they talked about visualize or picture who you want to be, and then think about it almost as if you're playing a part, and eventually you will grow into that and you will be like that. This is a situation of somebody who decides that's what I want to be, and so I'm going to emulate or basically take over and act like, be like, do everything she does so I can eventually replace her. I thought it was interesting. Originally, Claudette Colbert was supposed to be the lead, and the reason why Anne Baxter was cast was they looked a lot alike. They were going to actually do in there where she starts dressing like her, looking like her, and wearing her hair like her and such, so that they showed that she was trying to become a carbon copy of her.
Now, I'm not familiar necessarily with the short story that this is based on. I know that it came out of a publication a few years prior, and that this is a much longer and more robust adaptation. But I have to imagine that a lot of the premise of the film is wrapped up into that short story. Jaylan, I know this is your first time with the film, but what are your impressions of, I guess, how each of the characters is kind of interacting here?
There are things that I love and there are things that I totally hate. I really hate the idea that everyone is going. I really sympathize, by the way, with Margo in many of her aspects. First of all, the idea that they were trying to tell her that she has to be less of herself, less of that diva which she rightfully earned. She has to. There was a scene where I just couldn't stand her boyfriend, where he was like telling her, "Stop it and accept to be loved." And I felt like, oh my God, just stop telling women that. Stop telling them how to be, how to receive, how to act, how to be. I saw, honestly, an awful way, maybe realistic, but also, again, very, very, very misogynistic way of showing the female interaction, because every single woman was terrible to each other. And I even discovered that there is a bigger villain here than Eve, which is Karen, a backstabbing friend, underline, trying to put for herself, like justifications for going behind her friend's back, backstabbing her and ruining, seriously, because this was the snowball effect. Like, what Karen did was what escalated everything else in the other end of the movie. So Karen is a terrible character, even worse for me than Eve, because Karen is supposedly Margo's friend since forever. And Eve is like this strange girl who implants herself in her life. So why am I supposed to go antagonistic against Eve? Like, Eve is Eve. This is the industry. And this is corporate, by the way. Every new employee who gets in kind of implants themselves and kicks their manager after some point, even though the manager was their mentor, aka Margo with Eve. So I didn't see it as something alarming that shocked me. It happened every single day, and it's not just a woman-woman relationship. It could have happened somewhere else. But Karen's betrayal of Margo, now, that was something that I hated. I really felt bad for Margo's insecurities dating Bill, who is younger and hot, and the way she was seeing, of course, to me, this was really realistic, and I liked the way that she was saying that, yes, women, especially before now, where you can de-age yourself with threads and with Botox and stuff and look kind of different next to your young, hot boyfriend. But at the same time, she would still feel inside that, yes, I'm older than this man that I'm dating, blah, blah, blah. And this is something that I feel will always be relevant when a woman is dating a younger man, because she will always be judged and she will always feel even that internal judge inside her. I thought that Addison and Karen were the worst characters. Addison is a terrible person, a terrible industry sleaze. I hated everything about him. He is the kind of person who enjoys inflicting pain on women and putting women in terrible situation and blackmailing them. So for me, I mean, like, I felt like, yes, Eve, it's all about Eve, but there are worse characters than her, guys. So for me, Addison and Karen kind of like were awful. And I thought, like, I was really happy that Karen got it coming in the end, like, ha ha ha, look what happened to you because of what you did to your friend. And I thought Margo was a great character. However, I just didn't really like that they had to make her sacrifice things to find a supposed kind of peace and happiness. So this movie is brilliant in the way that it portrays a realistic way of looking at life in general, not just the industry. But at the same time, I thought there was a lot of negativity. I really like to see at least one good female character with Margo, because I didn't even feel like, yeah, she lost her career, but she gained her love and friends. Maybe love, but friends, those are friends. Oh my God. I'd rather she loses them.
Dad, we've gone on at length about this particular year for the Best Actress race, and it obviously did not go to any of the three primary people that you would think, given the stature and notoriety of the two films, Sunset Boulevard and All About Eve. But if you were to rank the three performances from those movies that got nominated, Anne Baxter, Bette Davis, Gloria Swanson, where would you come down there?
Swanson, Davis, Baxter.
I would have those in reverse order. I think Baxter is outstanding in this movie. I know we're going to talk about it here when we get to nominations, but I find her to be so devious and manipulative. And it's kind of the same reason that I enjoy George Sanders' performance in this.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. I thought George Sanders was just wonderful as this awful character. I feel like the awful characters were great because they were portrayed greatly. But seriously, you feel like you just want to kill him. But also, I really hated Karen. And I thought that Celeste Holm portrayed that feeling of guilt in a great... That scene between her and Anne Baxter was just phenomenal because of the guilt and the shame, which... honestly, I felt like rightfully deserved, bitch.
So this is often cited as one of the great Best Picture winners of all time. I believe it was in my personal top 10 again for Best Picture winners, as I rank that every year for the Oscars. Do both of you feel that it deserves the plaudits that it gets and being often mentioned among some of the great films of all time and Best Picture winners of all time?
Yeah. Especially the script. I mean, the script is great. When I look at these movies, I feel like, how did they make movies in the past? How live everything was. People were people. Now, I feel like even the best movie that I watch now, except maybe indies and some foreign movies, feel staged, feel unnatural. Something is missing. Here, it's even, like the mise en scène, the way people moved and talked and interacted, even though some performances are sometimes exaggerated a little bit because of, like the difference and stuff, but still it feels very alive. And this script is a golden script. Like, you could never go bad with this. And the wit in the dialogue is just spot on. So I feel like it's a great picture.
I would have to say yes, because so many times Best Picture winners don't age as well as they should. They tend to reflect too much of the moment and not enough of the longevity. Ultimately, and we'll get into that when we're talking about this film has legs. Release it today and it would have just as much poignancy today as it did back in 1950.
I think the theater scene and how important it is to the world of acting has definitely changed. Definitely how much Broadway is part of the pop cultural lexicon has definitely changed. But that being said, if you modify it slightly to be a film studio or people working on a particular set, you have a director, you have a writer, you have kind of a groupie, you have the lead actress, you have the up and coming people, the craft services and the PAs and the other people that are all part of this. You could adapt this story to fit a modern circumstance. I think it works really well, or lends itself really well to the theater, because of that kind of confined space that everybody has to be in this film, that you have to feel that even though it's a very or a relatively small cast, that they all know each other and very intimately, but it's part of this larger world. And I think you have to have that a little bit boxed in the scenes that it's in, but also portraying that there's this larger atmosphere beyond them, even though you don't necessarily see it really ever on screen.
I have a feeling that if you talk about the quintessential film about the film industry, back in the day, it would be all about Eve. And if you want something quintessential about what the film industry is now, it's the studio. Like, it's a TVC. Like, this is the difference for me. Like, when you think about it, the past, but now, if you try to think about the film industry now, for me, it would be like, it's not even a film defining it. It's more like the series and the idea of how meta it has become.
I wish I could really get into that show, but I find it so unbelievably cringy.
But I feel like it totally represents what we are now. The people's obsession with the awards, people's obsession with even the industry itself, people's obsession with actors, the industry's obsession with people's obsession with them, how meta they try to be, how they try to show you the behind the scenes and the coolness or the cringiness of the actors and what happens, and how they try to make awards more watchable and more approachable. So for me, I mean, like, it has lost its glamour, it has lost its aura. So this is what it represents now. If you want me, like, I don't think of the film industry, even though I'm a film critic now, something that is gasping. But All About Eve kind of like has this mysterious way of looking into this world that seems so foreign to you. But now it feels like, yeah, well, it's the studio. I don't really need to know.
I guess my criticism of the show is not that it's unrealistic. I find it to probably be incredibly realistic, and in some ways kind of a similar vibe to that of like Veep is to American politics. But that being said, I just find so many of the characters like cannot get out of their own way, and I have a hard time connecting with them, just being like there's this cognitive dissonance between their actions and their intentions. And so because of that, I have such a difficult time relating to it. It's like, dude, get out of your own way. And yet repeatedly, over and over and over again, he just puts himself into these situations that are so awkward and difficult in a way that he shouldn't have to. But I guess that's the comedy for some people. For me, I find it somewhat repulsive.
It's because the film industry has become repulsive in a way. Everything now is a joke or is, I don't know, for kicks.
As far as you're talking about, comedy is a lot of times based upon the sheer embarrassment, the stupidity of what the person is, the misunderstandings, embarrassing yourself by your own foibles type of thing. And you can look at multiple sitcoms and find that to be a common theme. The studio takes it a little bit to the same extent and broadens it out over a wider field than just an individual. Whether it be Frasier or it be Three's Company or any of those shows, it was a lot about putting yourself in embarrassing situations and finding humor in the fact that it's so cringy. I mean, look at The Office and Steve Carell's character. How many times was he behaving in such cringy fashion and you just wanted to, but it was funny because of that, but usually it was after you cringed.
And that's exactly why there are certain episodes of The Office that I just cannot go back to or watch. Like the Michael Scott's Kids, where he promises all of them their college tuition and then has to renege on it. I just cannot watch that episode.
I wonder why is that?
Because it's painful.
It is.
Oh. All right, so a little more background on the film. Did you know Bette Davis fell in love with her co-star, Gary Merrill, during the shoot of this movie, and the two married in July 1950, a few weeks after filming was completed. They adopted a baby girl whom they named Margo. They did indeed divorce almost exactly 10 years to the day after their wedding. Davis was quoted as saying that they had married their characters from the movie rather than the actual people. Sound familiar?
Very sad, honestly. The story is so sad and pathetic. Typical Hollywood.
You'll appreciate this next one. Did you know? Co-star Celeste Holm spoke about her experience with Bette Davis on the first day of shooting. Quote, I walked onto the set on the first day and said, good morning. And do you know her reply? She said, oh shit, good manners. I never spoke to her again, ever. Years later, Bette Davis said in an interview, filming All About Eve was a very happy experience. The only bitch in the cast was Celeste Holm.
Love this.
Cattiness never dies.
Never.
Did you know, despite their characters' tense relationship on screen, Bette Davis and Anne Baxter got along very well during filming? Quote, the studio tried to play that up all during the filming, recalled Baxter, but I liked Bette very much. She'd come on the set and go, sss, at me, but it was just a joke between us. Davis liked Baxter too, which was quite a compliment, as Davis reportedly didn't get along often with her female co-stars. She felt that Baxter did an excellent job with her part as Eve and publicly praised her for it. So at least some people got along.
I love this. I really love this because it's so unpredictable, like life. Like sometimes you would imagine, like, yeah, of course they would feud, but God, I feel like life is so unpredictable. You would never imagine. Sometimes you go into a job. This is why I'm telling you this film is timeless, and you would expect, like the office bitch or like the terrible person in the company to be like your enemy, and all of a sudden they're one of your best allies, and the people who are like, who are you, are the ones who backstab you and cause you all kinds of pain. So I love the unpredictability of life. Seriously.
So what you're saying here is that Celeste Holm's character being named Karen really isn't a stretch? Or is that term not translated overseas?
The Karens.
Yes.
But aren't they like the crazy white women who would tell people that they need to be served first? But no, she was like, no, she's scarier than that. She's the kind who's like your best friend, patting your shoulder, thinking you're doing something wrong to yourself and your boyfriend, only going to ruin your life out of her love and care for you. No, there must be like an expression for that. I don't know what it is, but I have seen it multiple times. Also, I feel like, I should teach Margo a lesson. Who are you? Like, bitch, who died and made you queen? Why would you do something to teach, like Margo a lesson or put a boot up her ass? Who are you? So I swear, I really hate entitled people like her. Look, my worst person in this movie is Karen. And she's even like, when I remember the Karens that I've seen compilations of them kind of like asking people to serve them and stuff like that, getting booed. I feel like, would she belong with them? No, she's even worse because she would be one of the compassionate passers-by looking, actually being worse.
Did you know? Margo Channing's famous cocktail dress was an Edith Head creation. To Head's horror, just as they were about to go film the cocktail party, she found that the dress didn't quite fit Bette Davis in the shoulders. There was no time to fix the dress, but fortunately, Davis hit on a bright idea of simply slipping the dress off of her shoulders.
See? This is how brilliant people work. Hello.
A series of happy accidents, I believe we keep saying on this show. Did you know? Life imitated art 33 years later when Anne Baxter stepped into Bette Davis's shoes to replace her on the series Hotel from 1983 after she fell ill. Davis never returned to the show. Do you have any familiarity with this show, Dad?
I know it was on.
Okay.
There were, during the 70s and early 80s, there were a whole run of these nighttime soap operas. Dynasty, Dallas, etc. I didn't watch any of them. I mean,
okay. All right.
They were schlock. I watched comedy or I watched movies. I watched sports. That's what.
All right. And finally, this last one, Dad, I included just for you.
Okay.
Did you know Zsa Zsa Gabor kept arriving on the set because she was jealous of her husband, George Sanders, in his scenes with the young blonde ingenue, Marilyn Monroe?
Yes. Then he later on married Magda, Jaja's older sister.
Okay.
Wait a minute. So he divorced her and married her older sister?
Yeah, it was. I think there were 2 wives in between.
What a dude. Oh my God. He's awesome.
When you have that syrupy voice like George Sanders does that can sound uptight and yet sinister, I mean, that's got to be a panty dropper right there.
Yeah, the perfect combo.
And with that, we will take our first break and we'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 285th episode, we welcome back Heather Stewart to discuss Requiem for a Dream from 2000, celebrating its 25th anniversary. Written and directed by Darren Aronofsky with Hubert Selby Jr., cinematography by Matthew Libatique, music by Clint Mansell, starring Ellen Burstyn, Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, and Marlon Wayans. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching The Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Before we get too much further, Jaylan, let's check in with you. What are you working on and where can people find you?
Currently, I'm working on a couple of things, couple of reviews, but I have 2 exciting interviews coming up. Hopefully on Geek Vibes Nation YouTube channel or on my own channel, The J Days. People can find me on Twitter, X, whatever. I'm still Jaylan_Salah. I'm on Blue Sky, which I don't really use much, Jaylan Salah, but on Instagram also Jaylan Salman, The J Days YouTube channel. And you can read my reviews across many platforms, In Session Film, Geek Vibes Nation, Movie John, etc. Twin Geeks, lots of places.
Very, very busy, aren't you?
Trying.
All right. So that means it's time for our weekly Cinema Legacy Poll rankings release. So last week we left you off at number 61. So we read off number 69 through 61. And just a quick recap here. We had a tie at 69 between Spirited Away and Children of Men. We had a tie at 67 between Memento and Unforgiven. We had a tie at 65 between The Thing and Akiru. And we had a tie at 63 between Whiplash and Saving Private Ryan. At number 62, we had Good Will Hunting, and 61, The Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. Tonight, we will give you 59 through 51. We have one of our last remaining ties, our second to last one. Our last remaining tie will be next week when we give you numbers 50 through 41. But for tonight's purposes, we only have one more to give you. So without further ado, number 59, we have a tie between The Graduate from 1967 and The Exorcist from 1973. Now, obviously, Dad and I have covered The Graduate most recently when we talked about it on the Revisionist Almanac in last December, I believe, the last episode of Andrew's season 1. But I have not seen The Exorcist. Dad, have you seen both of these?
Obviously, I've seen The Graduate. I have not seen The Exorcist.
Okay. I imagine we will be covering both on our show at some point. We have not done so to this point, but definitely keep in mind. Jaylan, have you seen both of these?
Of course, and I love both.
Okay.
I think The Graduate ending is brilliant, and I love The Exorcist because my mom is like the biggest horror movie buff ever, so I watch every single horror movie because she usually watches it first and recommends it to me. So definitely any horror movie you mention, I probably watched it, especially if it's like one of the classics, like back in the day and stuff like that.
Okay. At number 58, and this was entirely unplanned, it's just a happy accident, but we have our, I believe, second or third to last international film on the list. We have In the Mood for Love from 2000.
I don't even know what to say. I worship at the shrine of In the Mood for Love. I seriously, if you want to ask me, cinema, what is cinema in the mood for love? Who are you in the mood for love? What do you like about yourself, about life, about directing, about acting, about anything? I don't think any film I ever watched or will watch in the future will reach what In the Mood for Love has done for me personally.
We have only 2 international films left on the list. I will leave you in speculation as to what those 2 could be. But I'm pretty sure everybody has heard of both of those films. All right, at number 57, we have the sci-fi classic by Christopher Nolan, Interstellar. Dad, we've obviously covered it for the show. Jaylan, I would assume you've seen this movie.
Watched it. I'm honestly not a Nolan fanatic. I'm like, okay, Nolan is great, yeah, blah blah blah, but not my guy, you know.
Oh, that's fair. Dad, where does this fall in the Nolan oeuvre for you?
Middle of the pack.
Okay.
Oppenheimer. Boy, The Prestige has got to be up there. Dunkirk is up there.
I think I personally have Oppenheimer 1 and Dunkirk 2. And then as far as like best rankings, but then after that, I think you could make an argument for quite a few different films. I have a personal attachment to Inception and The Dark Knight, and I know those aren't for everybody, but they are for me more personally. I think a lot of people might have Memento higher, which is another one that has appeared higher on this list, but yeah. All right, number 56, we have our next, let's say, of all of the 1975 Best Picture nominees, this is the only one we did not cover on this season of the show, but we have Sidney Lumet's, or Lumet, or Lumet, or however you want to say it, Dog Day Afternoon from 1975. Attica. Dad, have you seen Dog Day?
Yes, I watched it with you.
I don't remember you watching with me. Huh. Okay. Interesting. I would assume, Jaylan, since you already responded, you know exactly. Yeah, okay. All right. And then number 55, we're throwing the clock back to 1934. We have the Best Picture winner from that year, It Happened One Night, which we covered on the show last season. Then we have number 54, another Best Picture winner, this time from 1976. We have the sports movie classic, Rocky. Number 53, a personal favorite of someone who has been a guest on this show, and we will be covering this next year when she is a returning guest on this show, The Searchers from 1956, our only John Ford movie on the list.
Wow.
122 films and only one John Ford.
The landscape must not be interesting.
I guess so. Number 52, we have another Best Picture winner here, but this time a musical. We have The Sound of Music.
Are the Hills Alive?
All I will say is we have covered this on the Life of the Show.
Yes.
It is an interesting episode, to say the least. I did my best to try and edit around our guest for that episode. If you would like a laugh, go back and listen to that. But that is deserving of a revisit one of these years.
I have to listen to this episode.
We didn't have a relative on as the guest, did we?
No.
I don't remember.
It was our guest from Montreal who was an actor who showed up who clearly did not read any of the materials ahead of time, hadn't prepared anything, and just talked platitudes about Julie Andrews the entire time.
Yes.
Still not as awkward as the kimono guy, but that's a story for another time.
What's the kimono guy? Come on, spill.
No. That's another one we'll tell off air in the Discord.
I want to hear this.
Anyway, moving on. Our final reveal for the evening is our only Rob Reiner film, The Princess Bride from 1987.
Princess Bride.
A lot of people love this movie. I saw it when I was 30, so it did not have the same effect on me as like younger people. Or I gotta tell you, I thought it was grossly overrated. I don't get it.
I watched it when I was young. Hated it because I was a very dark goth teenager who liked, like movies where there's always blood and death and, like people eating each other out. And then I watched it older and had some capacity for love. Also, because, like Wesley hit home for me. When I was younger, I was like, Wesley, I don't care. But when I was older, I was like, okay, look at Wesley. So yeah, I think I got older and kinder and more generous with my feelings.
I'm hoping that maybe I'll eventually see it. I have not returned to it. I only saw it the one time, but it was one of the glaring holes in my filmography that I had to fill for people because it constantly would come up and people would say, you haven't seen that movie? That's one of these huge movies that I can't believe you haven't seen. Yes, those do exist, but I don't know. If I were picking a Rob Reiner film, this would not be the one that I would pick. I would much more happily go with When Harry Met Sally or A Few Good Men.
Yes. Yeah, but these are, of course, superior films. But I feel like when people overhype a movie and try to tell me about it, I usually hate it. Just to piss them off, honestly. Like, oh my God, you can't believe you haven't. Okay, I'm going to hate this movie and hate you afterward. I know myself.
Yeah, you sound much like my father in that. You enjoy...
Yes, I knew I was like Dana.
I think... I don't know what it is. How many guests seem to like you better than me and relate to you better than me? Am I just that awful, or are you just that much more of the quote-unquote man of the people?
I don't know. I'm just, I'm more calm, laid back.
Sure. Let's go with that.
Yeah.
We'll see about that the next time. I'll TikTok or I'll video you taking an order at any fast food drive-through and waiting on the order. And then we'll see how calm and whatever you are.
There are certain things that piss me off.
Chicago traffic.
That I'm not that bad with anymore. That's no.
Man, did that stop?
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, of course. But that's never stopped you before. Oh, anyway. All right. So these are the 10 films on the list this week. Again, the tie at 59 between The Graduate and The Exorcist, 58 In the Mood for Love, 57 Interstellar, 56 Dog Day Afternoon, 55 It Happened One Night, 54 Rocky, 53 The Searchers, 52 The Sound of Music, and 51 The Princess Bride. Initial reactions, Dad?
Very, very varied list. I mean, I can't, again, it's all over. Some films that I understand why they're on the list, not necessarily the films I had picked that high, but then again, that's why we do the lists.
So, a few other additional notes here. This is our second Christopher Nolan film on the list so far. He only has 2 more remaining, and both within the next set of drops. So we will be hearing his name a couple more times and then not at all. We do only have 2 more international films, as I mentioned. This film, or this drop, includes our 6th horror film on the list to date. So far with The Exorcist now being number 6. We have Nosferatu, Train to Busan, Night of the Living Dead, 7, and The Thing. We still have 6 more horror films to go. So if you include that, roughly there's 122 films on the list, 13 out of 122, more than 10% of our list is horror films. So I do feel that it is fairly well represented in that genre here. A couple other genre notes here. We have our 3rd Western on the list with The Searchers. Unforgiven and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre were the other 2. We still have 2 more Westerns to go. This is our 6th different musical in The Sound of Music. We also had The Red Shoes, West Side Story, Cabaret, All That Jazz, and Beauty and the Beast. We only have 2 other musicals remaining higher, and both of them are inside the top 10. So I will let you speculate as to what those 2 are. All right, and then our 4th sci-fi film so far with Interstellar, and we also have had E.T., Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and Wall-E. We have 9 other sci-fi classics yet to go. So we have not even covered half of the sci-fi films that are on this list. It seems like they're overweighted towards the top of the list. We have 3 more Best Picture winners this week, and It Happened One Night, Rocky, and The Sound of Music. So far, we have 16 different winners announced on the list. Do you want to take a guess which decade we have the most Best Picture winners from so far?
The 1970s.
Not bad. That is one of the 4 or 5 decades that we have 2 from, but is not number 1. Jaylan, would you like to take a shot?
60s.
That is correct. 1860s, we have The Apartment, West Side Story, and The Sound of Music.
See, kind of felt it. I don't know why. However, my reaction to this list is only one thing: In the Mood for Love. I don't care about any other movie. I seriously feel like I don't care about movies at all. I just care about In the Mood for Love and Wong Kar-wai. Please talk to me. Tell me.
So we only have one director on the list so far with 2 different Best Picture winners on the list. Care to take a guess as to who that might be?
Billy Wilder?
No.
Oh, I was going to say Billy Wilder.
That's
I
a
don't
good guess.
know. But I swear he's like the first name that get like Billy Wilder. Who?
It is a good guess, but it is not quite him. Robert Wise for West Side Story and The Sound of Music.
I'm not a fan of West Side Story. Sound of Music I liked, but I liked as a kid, not as adult me. You know what I mean? Like I sang the song in the school choir. You know, like do a dear. So yeah, of course I liked it as a kid. I watched it like constantly with The King and I and all my mom's classics. But then, you know, now.
Oh, I still like them. I find musicals to be great, but it's been a while probably since I've turned either of those on.
I love musicals as in all that jazz cabaret, you know, like darker musicals with death involved. But I don't like musicals that were, I don't know, where I was just a happy kid, you know, not knowing about the crappy world.
All right. Additionally here, we had our second sports movie and second boxing movie on the list with Rocky. Only Raging Bull at 105 has been the other one. We have no higher sports films on the list. So that ends our sports filmography for this list. As I mentioned, we had our first Sidney Lumet film. We also have our first Frank Capra film, but those will not be the end for either of those 2. They do have some additional films coming up on the list. As I mentioned, our only John Ford film. But so far, here is the director breakdown for anyone with at least 2 films on the list. I was incorrect last week when I said Tarantino was the only other director with 3. So we have Akira Kurosawa with 4 on the list so far, Tarantino with 3, and David Fincher has 3. Steven Spielberg currently has 2, Damien Chazelle has 2, Peter Jackson with 2, Christopher Nolan with 2, Paul Thomas Anderson has 2 films on the list so far, John Huston has 2 films on the list so far, and Robert Wise with 2. And again, as we did last week, and I will repeat here, do you want to take a guess at what the film breakdown by decade currently looks like?
It'd be just complete guesses.
So currently the 1990s is in the lead with 12 films. The 1970s is number 2 with 10 films. And then we have the 2000s with 9, the 2010s with 9. We have 7 from the 1980s, 6 from the 1960s, 5 from the 1940s and 50s, and then 4 films apiece from the 20s and 30s. So any other quick reaction to the list at this point?
No.
All right. We have 50 films left to go. Getting into the home stretch now. More than halfway through the list so far, and I think we've got a very interesting list yet to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that takes care of that. Some other just quick business here for the podcast. I do want to welcome our listeners from 5 new places this week. I would love to welcome our newest listeners from Armenia, Aruba, the Bahamas.
Jamaica.
Oh, I want to take you. Bermuda, Bahama. Anyway, the British Virgin Islands. And finally, our newest listeners from Lebanon. So welcome to all of you. Thank you for being with us.
Land of Cyprus.
Lebanon is like the land of my grandmothers. Both my grandmothers were Lebanese, so I'm not just Egyptian. I also have Lebanese roots.
So let's get back into the show for the evening. We left off at Best Performance. Dad, who do you have down?
Well, when you were asking me to rank them, I had forgotten this, so I apologize for the inconsistency, but I have Anne Baxter for Best Performance.
Yeah, I tip my hand. I do too.
to be perfectly honest, I know I wanted to say right now I have Bette Davis' second performance, but I didn't think her performance was that special.
I think there's a spunkiness and a power and veracity mixed with a vulnerability that's more appealing to women. But the men, I think, gravitate towards Baxter a little bit more because of the manipulation and the power playing and some of the things that are more masculine seeming categories.
Yes. Scheming, conniving, backstabbing, being willing to sacrifice anything and everything for your own benefit. Yes, definitely masculine.
I have no disagreement there.
I know.
That those are known male characteristics.
I know.
Guys, are we serious here?
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
I don't stick up for my gender too often. We're very close to Thomas Hobbes, cruel, brutish, and short.
He's got a point. That being said, I find Baxter to be like the heel turn in this, where you can start to see that she's this conniving bitch, is so like I could eat it up. I could barely eat it with a spoon. It is awesome to see her just kind of like weasel her way and seem like this innocent flower and this doe of a deer. And yet then she is this like manipulative power player that's just working everybody. And only when she meets her match does she get her comeuppance. And I find that to be easily the most delicious of any of the storylines in this movie. As much as I enjoy the Bette Davis first half of this movie, I think the second half really cements it for me. And I think most of that has to do between my best performance in Anne Baxter, my best secondary performance in George Sanders. So are we 3 for 3, Jaylan, or did you go with someone else?
No, I definitely picked Anne as the best performance and Bette Davis as the secondary performance. I also think I didn't expect Bette Davis to be a bit of, like a sympathetic character, because I came in with a grudge and a baggage of, knowing her as cinema's most famous bitch. So I was like, okay, I'm going to dislike you from the beginning. But also I feel like because characters like Eve are very attractive and kind of like sexy in a way, more than Margo. Margo who speaks her mind, Margo who is always nasty with a scowl on her face. She has been in the industry for so long, so of course it wore off on her when she has this great speech of forgetting to be a woman, kind of like shedding off her womanhood, but then wanting to restore it for her man, which is, I hate this storyline. But the idea of that, I feel like it was a very repulsive thing, sexual-wise or even attractive-wise. So definitely Eve would be the much more kind of like appealing with her, like with her eyes, with her wide-eyed, like acting of innocence and kind of like being this dew-eyed newcomer. So I really like that back and forth between them. So I could like shift them and bring them, like a TikTok, like back and forth between which is my favorite and my second favorite. For me, they were both like very interchangeable because they are like interchangeable aspects of humanity, of womanhood, especially for me. Like, I feel like, yes, this is a masculine aspect to Eve's character, but I've seen a lot of women like that. And they're also kind of, I'm not going to say scary, but fascinating to watch because you feel like, wow, how did you reach that stage of kind of like having the deceitful way of creating womanhood? So I find that very interesting.
I find them both to be bookends to this movie, and I certainly don't have any issue with either of them being a best performance or best secondary performance here. I guess I ultimately went with other people just because I enjoyed them more or wanted to recognize them a little bit more. Particularly George Sanders has always been a favorite of mine in this particular role, although he's equally as good in Rebecca, a film that also made the CLP list. And so he's got his own things going on that, again, that buttery, syrupy kind of way that he talks and manipulates people. And there was just a small piece or a kind of a throwaway that I don't know how many people necessarily notice unless you're like a regular film viewer. But when he kind of asserts himself and he takes over power, where Anne and he are both seated in that room and there's that kind of exchange between the two and the final reveal, he stands up to start being higher than she is, so that he's looking down upon her for once. And I find that to be kind of like this physical signifier of that. I find that great in the direction of this movie. I mean, I would understand if we all ended up having actors as our best performances, and we already said best secondary and best lead performances. I don't know if any of us have recognized the director, but we already mentioned the script. I think the direction in this is also excellent. So you could have plaudits going all the way around this entire production, because I find, and I guess I'll reveal this a little bit ahead of time, this might be one of the best executed movies, top to bottom, from just in every piece of it individually seems to work. And then it comes together to make just such a great soup or pie collectively. Like the whole is great and the sum of the parts are great, and they both work in concert extremely well here. So Dad, you said you had Bette Davis for your best secondary. Why did you and Jaylan include her as your best secondary?
Well, for me, she really had a presence on the screen. You know, I know that it's the old adage, and I think it was a Kim Carnes song, Bette Davis eyes.
Yes.
There's something about them that they are, you know, they draw you in. And so you can see a lot of what she sees or feels by the way she carries her eyes. I think in part that's where she shines as an actress, is how much of her emotions are expressed on her face.
It's a way of her ability to show vulnerability that I found particularly engaging this viewing of the movie, but it's in a way that's not overly expressive or doesn't feel showy. I mean, I know that she comes to prominence during like the 1930s, where we've often criticized movies from that era for being overly expressive, and yet she seems to have a much more subtle or smaller expressiveness to her acting ability, and I find that to be much more engaging. I know Jaylan kind of alluded to it earlier with it's more realistic to her point of view as opposed to modern acting, which we would probably put more synonymous with the actor's studio. But I find her ability to inhabit kind of, I guess, a real vulnerability to be somewhat of her quiet strength. And it comes out a lot in this film because that actress particularly, in order for that role to work, it has to have so many little vulnerabilities about it that are grating on you as an audience member, but then also rewarding when you get to certain other sections of the film.
I try to imagine this situation in real life and how, when I don't know the dynamics, I would definitely root for Eve and dislike Margo. So I really like that she kind of showed her frustration with knowing that people wouldn't sympathize with her. And I love that she could portray that. Like, she could actually show you that. This is brilliant, especially from her, because I didn't expect that from her. I thought she would be like one-dimensional, hideous, nasty. I came in with my knowledge of Bette Davis, and I came in with what happened to Baby Jane and hating her so much, and it being so, you know, like, oh, look at Joan Crawford, poor woman, and look at this evil hag. So yeah, didn't expect to kind of root for her.
It would have been real easy for her to have overplayed the vulnerability and to come across as more petulant or, you know, childish at times for some of the things. And she did play it right on. It was believable. It was somebody who you could see vulnerability, but is trying to maintain a thick outer crust of a crust of invincibility. I am the star. But her own self-doubts bled through.
Repeatedly, of course. Most charismatic, I had Celeste Holm. I actually find her to be the opposite of how Jaylan finds her. I don't mind her at all. Her offstage presence and difficulties with co-stars aside, I actually find that character to be well-meaning, but I'm trying to think of how to put this. Her intentions are good, her actions are misjudged.
She doesn't think her shit through.
Yes. Like, I don't think she meant to necessarily harm Bette Davis in the way that she does, or Margo, I guess, is the character name. But she certainly accomplishes that. I will say, there was a part of me that really thought about the movie Anchorman about that point in the movie. I'm not sure why I put those two together exactly, but the pivot point in the movie where the up-and-comer supplants the older star, and it's because of this interaction where they're incapacitated and they can't make the show, so the other one has to go on for them, I found to be kind of like eerily similar. And I'm like, did Anchorman rip off one of the great movies of all time intentionally or unintentionally? Just a thought. But beside the point, I do find her to be, again, kind of the like conscience of the film at times. I'm trying to express exactly what I mean here, but since she does the majority of the narration, she feels like this omniscient narrator at times, and she's more of an unreliable narrator at times as well. So you have to find her somewhat appealing, I think, to really get into the psyche of the movie, because everything is, even though I don't think that the characters are necessarily responding in, like, Karen is expressing this story after the fact. This is more of her just breaking the fourth wall through a narration, as opposed to everything is told through her perspective, or everything that's going on screen is from her perspective. But I still think that she becomes the lens by which we look, because she frames a lot of the issues through her narration. So you have to find that character, in my mind, somewhat appealing to really buy into the film. Now, why am I wrong?
There's so many reasons, but for right now, as your point's being made, probably not that far off.
You've never been a woman. You've never been manipulated as a woman by a woman. When you have that Karen girl in your female group, trust me, you'll get her bite. And all your male friends and your boyfriends and whatever will find her sympathetic and will tell you she's well-meaning, but you will know better. That's all I can say.
That's very fair, Jaylan. I have never once claimed to be a woman. I don't envision myself claiming to be one at any point. And frankly, there's probably a reason I'm very single.
No, come on. No, but seriously, I could see in my mind the conversation that I have with you if you were my boyfriend. Like, definitely like, but why? She didn't do anything wrong. And me looking at you like, yeah. I expected that. I saw that coming. But seriously, it's
trying to understand women is like trying to tell you what color the number 7 smells like.
I will tell you something. You trying to understand women is like me trying to understand American football, baseball. Similarly. People explain to me for months, and I'm like, yes, you're right. I don't get anything. What does all this mean? So, yeah.
Dad, what was your most charismatic?
Oh, without question, it's George Sanders. I mean, only George Sanders could make a character use a cigarette holder and make it look cool. He's just so slimy.
He is delightfully smarmy.
Yes. And a lot of guys, when they watch that, wish they were him.
A lot of guys would love to be a kingmaker.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly of women.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Jaylan,
who is your most charismatic?
Well, definitely George Sanders, but also Marilyn Monroe. Because I feel like, yes, she appears in this. She turns heads. When I see her here, and I know she has no role, and I know she's playing of her reality and what she did, and it was kind of like very meta too, but I feel like she always turns heads. Whenever she enters a room, it's mostly her, and then others kind of like dim their lights. I love her. I really love her, even with all her flaws. So definitely her and George Sanders. And she was like what in one scene and played this character that is very unattractive when you see it. The woman who dumps herself down to get, like blah blah blah, sleeps her way up, but still she did it in her own Marilyn-esque way. So I'll give her that.
For being in only 2 scenes in the movie, she definitely is memorable. All right, let's move to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here. I have Eve's story, so the part where she kind of reveals her initial story to everyone in Margot's dressing room. Then I have Bill's party, which is kind of the first real interaction between all of the characters mixing and mingling over and over and over in different combinations. Then I have Eve blackmails Karen. I have Addison owns Eve, which is the conversation we mentioned before, where he finally takes over the control of the situation and reveals that he's had his thumb over her basically the entire time. And then finally, Eve's replacement. So the last roughly 5 minutes of the film. Do you have any other scenes either of you would like to add to this list?
No.
Okay, hearing none.
Okay, wait. Karen's inner monologue to get back at Eve, and look what I wrote between brackets. Karen is an awful friend. She's the real villain. This scene, I swear, because I had to replay this scene. Seriously, because I was like, wait a minute. Do this to your friend, you bitch. So yeah, this is of course one of my favorite scenes because I didn't see this coming. All I was waiting for was Eve, downfall of Margo, blah blah blah. But then I see this thing and I was like, you call yourself her friend? I wonder what's in your heart. I wonder what you thought of her in the beginning while she was rising to the top. So yeah, it kind of like gave me another revelation into the Karen character and layered her for me. In the beginning, she was like this one-dimensional, boring, like friend, wife of the writer, blah blah blah.
Yeah. All right, so then we have Eve's story, Bill's party, Karen betrays Margo, Eve blackmails Karen, Addison owns Eve, and Eve's replacement. What out of these is the best scene?
I have Bill's party. I like the interplay. I like the way the little parry and thrusts go around in the various conversations. I like the whole thing. I think it sets a tone for how the rest of the film is going to go and how the dynamics of the various characters are going to play out.
Personally, I have Addison owns Eve. I wouldn't be me if I didn't, especially how much I've talked up both of those characters. But I feel that those are the two probably most powerful characters in the entire story. And for them to kind of go back and forth and finally have this battle over who's actually in control has always fascinated me. And I think that that's really the moment where the film cements itself as one of the true all-time great classics.
Well, it's that scene in and of itself is a classic of knowledge is power, and having, knowing enough what questions to ask to trick her up. And then I'll guarantee he had somebody investigate her.
Naturally.
And that's how you ultimately win in these situations.
Let's go to favorite scenes then. Mine is Bill's party for a lot of the reasons that Dad stated, but I just like a lot of the interactions between the various characters all throughout this. You have Eve and you have Karen, you have Margo and you have Bill prior to the party, you have Margo and you have Lloyd. I mean, there's a lot of different interacting parts. There's the conversations on the stairs. So the depth overall of this scene and how many different people are interacting one after the other, I just find to be really engaging. And frankly, it's probably the one where I don't know if it sucks you into the film, but it's one where if it's on TV, it's an instant remote dropper for me.
Yeah, the party, definitely.
For me, it was Addison owns Eve. To me, it's my favorite scene because it's the one that I get the most satisfaction out of. And when you, the number of times that you've done when you do trial work, where you'll set people up by asking them questions to get answers that they know they've either contradicted themselves, or you'll be able to show the fallacy of what they say. The minute he asks, was that the Schubert Hotel or the theater in San Francisco? Right away there's no Schubert theater in San Francisco.
Well, and it also cements itself by the theater that they go to in Connecticut is the Schubert. So you
there's
even
one
know
in Chicago. There's one obviously in New York, but and that's what I'm getting at is it's just those ability to pull bits of information that you then utilize to undermine somebody later on.
Most indelible moment, I have Eve's replacement, so roughly the last 5 minutes of the film, because to me, I think one of the genius moves of this story is not that it's at the moment where Eve triumphs and gets exactly what she wants. She realizes her own ambition and her talent and all of the other things, but it's rather knowing that this cycle will continue. I find that to be probably the most eerie part of the film, is recognizing within itself that this is just going to continue going on. It'll be the next person then replaces the next person. The next person comes up and emulates that person, et cetera, et cetera. And as we continue on, and this is how it will be and how it's been and how it always will be.
It was for me too. It wouldn't surprise me if there was an understudy for Laura Kearns was her name, from Our American Cousin when Lincoln was assassinated. I think that was the actress's name. I mean, I think it probably dates back that far.
Why don't we just go back to the time of Thespis when he stepped out of the choir?
Well, they were all male actors.
Okay.
So
that doesn't mean they were any less catty. Jaylan, what was your most indelible moment?
Definitely Margo's speech in the car. Because I feel like it just showed you that it's as if she was talking that there was no hope. First of all, it had Karen, like the Judas of the movie. So yeah, sitting there and her apologizing to her and kind of like telling her, like, I was mean to you and to Eve. And I was like looking at Karen's face, just wanting to punch her all the time. And then Margo going on and on about who is she and what does that mean? What's Margo? There's no hope for women, you know what I mean? Like, you have to go to the top and forget about something, or then you have to stay where you are and lose a lot of things. So for me, it was a scene that said there is no hope. It didn't feel like a monologue of her lamenting herself, but it was a very hopeless moment. So it had to be my favorite indelible scene.
She is better than Judas. She did not get 40 pieces of silver.
She didn't get anything. She got her man taken, which serves her right.
No, actually, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Lloyd never was with Eve.
Yes, but the fact that she was in that mental capacity of her fearing it, that for me was rewarding.
Ah, okay. Understood. Well, that looks like a good spot for our second break. We'll be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our Master Greatest Movies of All Time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find it as the top entry on the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast show page. That has the grades we've done so far for all 255 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, I know we have some people to remember this week. There are a few that are a little bit more close to when this recording was that didn't get on your list, so I will start with those here. Drew Struzan, 78, American film poster artist. He worked on the posters for Back to the Future, all of the Indiana Jones movies, The Thing, all of the original 6 Star Wars films, and the Harry Potter series. Jackie Birch, 74, American casting director. She worked on Die Hard, 16 Candles, and The Breakfast Club. She has some other credits to her name as well, but these were her 3 most prominent films. And finally, we have D'Angelo, 51, American musician. He had the albums Brown Sugar and Voodoo. I have to admit that this is not somebody that I was particularly familiar with this week, but seemingly I must be the only person who at least somewhat listens to R&B and hip hop who did not know of him or any of his music. So I guess I was left out on this one, and it made me feel extra white this week.
Tommy Price, 68, American drummer. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Scandal, and Love Crushed Velvet. And then a big one. Diane Keaton, 79, American actress. Annie Hall, The Godfather, Something's Gotta Give, won the Oscar in 1978. Supposedly for Annie Hall, but a lot of people think it should have been, or a lot of people gave it to her because of Looking for Mr. Goodbar.
For as big of a personality and memorable actress as she was, I found it a little interesting that her filmography does not seem to match what her status necessarily is. Outside of the Godfather films and Annie Hall, like, she was in a lot of comedies of the last 20 years that were probably aimed at my mother.
Yes.
Now, I know that I'm a very heavy critic on Annie Hall on this show. I don't find it particularly funny. I don't think it's anything having to do with Diane Keaton's role, and I don't have any particular qualm with her winning a Best Actress award. I do think she was a very talented actress. In fact, from the Godfather movies, I think she's a wonderful actress in both of those films. Particularly the scene from Godfather Part 2 where she talks about the abortion. Oh, just wrenching. I know that she means a lot more to other people than she necessarily did to me as an actress, but you do feel the loss because this is yet another seminal star of this era, the 1970s that we've talked about, that is on their way out. We lost Robert Redford. We've lost Gene Hackman. We've talked about how many different people are going to go within this period of time, and she's just yet another one that we pay homage and tribute to significantly here for, if anything, just their collective effort at what is recognized for the most part as being possibly the greatest film decade ever made.
Yeah, each time, and I'll be honest, every time I look at this and I start seeing the numbers or the ages, and I start realizing how mine keeps ratcheting closer and closer.
Oh, let's not go there, Dad.
Oh, stop. No. Stop.
But these are the actors and actresses that I grew up with. So it's kind of the same principle of seeing a lot of the baseball and football stars from my childhood passing. You lose a little piece of your childhood every time this happens.
I guess that's likely to be true with the generation just preceding you that you look up to because they're the ones trend setting and culture setting. I can't say that she didn't do anything other than help to set an era of film that was incredibly influential on the culture.
Well, it's a sad day.
I have a feeling that the In Memoriam section is going to mean a lot more in the near future to some of us because it's just going to be big name after big name after big name that have cemented what the film industry currently is.
Yeah.
And she certainly has no less of a contribution than anybody else to this. I will say, and this was not a story that I was familiar with, I think this was a video you sent me on TikTok the other day, that she apparently discovered Reese Witherspoon in the mid-90s.
Yes.
So another contribution of just bringing somebody along and allowing for the ladder to be brought up after you. And this is similar to the conversation we had with Robert Redford a few weeks back, where he was very helpful to actors coming up after him. He was trend setting for actors who wanted to also become directors at that time period. The people that I think get recognized with true legendary status are the people that cement not only their own legacy, but also allow for others to come up after them. And so in a movie and in a conversation where we've talked about almost the exact opposite, people being really insecure about people replacing them, I think that this is a recognition that that doesn't always have to be the case in this industry.
Yes,
True.
in the world, please, if someone at least can help someone else struggling or younger or trying to pave their way, you have no idea how that impacts a person. Look at Reese Witherspoon, still remembering it to this day, and I saw that clip. And personally, I love Diane Keaton because for me, as a Leo DiCaprio girl, I watched Marvin's Room and I was obsessed with it, and I loved her so much. I even thought she was better than Meryl Streep. And Annie Hall was a significant movie because I had a boyfriend who was obsessed with Woody Allen before all the crappy allegations, of course. And he really thought he would be like the next, like Woody Allen and stuff. And when we broke up, we always thought that we were like, intellectuals in a relationship, blah, blah, blah. When we broke up, he kind of like printed a photo from the movie and told me like, this will always be us, So I at the time I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. It's a breakup. And when she died, this is the moment that came to my mind that this woman's art was something inspiring to us at a special moment. So it kind of felt like a part of me left. Same way that Michelle Trachtenberg, who is like 3 years older than me, only died. And I felt, wait a minute, she's only 3 years older. How? So yeah, these things kind of like hurt you in ways that you don't even imagine, probably.
So your ex wanted to emulate Woody Allen. Did he also have socks on during sex?
Thankfully, no. No, he's just an idiot. He's in love with the idea of the neurotic genius who is awkward around women, you know what I mean? Like, he emulated that facade, but he didn't go deep as in, like, I'm gonna hook up with my stepdaughter who is 16 or 15. Yeah, no, didn't go to that territory, thankfully.
All right, now that we've dissed Woody Allen here and done our job effectively, we take a moment of silence here to remember all of these and their contributions to the art collectively with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. All right, let's go to best funniest lines. We'll go in a round robin fashion here. My first one is the obvious one. Margo, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
I detest cheap sentiment.
Addison DeWitt. Margo Channing is a star of the theater. She made her first stage appearance at the age of 4 in Midsummer Night's Dream. She played a fairy and entered quite unexpectedly, stark naked. She has been a star ever since. Margo is a star, a true star. She never was or will be anything less or anything else.
Margo, nice speech, Eve, but I wouldn't worry too much about your heart. You can always put that award where your heart ought to be.
In this rat race, everybody's guilty till they're proved innocent.
Lloyd Richards. That bitter cynicism of yours is something you've acquired since you left Radcliffe. Karen. The cynicism you referred to, I acquired the day I discovered I was different from little boys.
Margo. Funny business, a woman's career. The things you drop on your way up the ladder so that you can move faster. You forget you'll need them again when you get back to being a woman. That's one career all females have in common, whether we like it or not, being a woman. Sooner or later, we've got to work at it, no matter how many other careers we've had or wanted. And in the last analysis, nothing's any good unless you can look up just before dinner or turn around in bed and there he is. Without that, you're not a woman. You're something with a French provincial office or a book full of clippings, but you're not a woman. Slow curtain, the end.
Margo, those years stretch as the years go on. I've seen it happen too often. Karen, not to you, not to Bill. Margo, isn't that what they always say?
Addison DeWitt. That I should want you at all suddenly strikes me as the height of improbability. But that, in and of itself, is probably the reason. You're an improbable person, Eve, and so am I. We have that in common. Also, our contempt for humanity and inability to love and be loved, insatiable ambition and talent. We deserve each other.
Margo, Bill's 32. He looks 32. He looked at 5 years ago. He'll look at 20 years from now. I hate men.
I hate men too.
Do you have any left, Dad?
I have one. Birdie. The bed looks like a dead animal act. That's the one thing I will say about this film that I regret. Thelma Ritter disappears halfway through.
This pissed me off so much. Thank you. Finally, I agree. She was perfect.
I know.
Eve, if there's nothing else, there's applause. I've listened backstage to people applaud. It's like waves of love coming over the footlights and wrapping you up. Imagine to know every night that different hundreds of people love you. They smile, their eyes shine. You've pleased them. They want you. You belong. Just that alone is worth anything.
I'm done.
Okay, my last one. Miss Caswell, tell me this. Do they have auditions for television? Addison DeWitt. That's all television is, my dear. Nothing but auditions. All right. Let's move to the Stanley rubric, our last major piece up here. We have legacy up first. Legacy is a measure of the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out, so 1955 to today, roughly the last 70 years. What is the legacy of the film as shared between two separate yet equal groups, the industry and the audience? 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
Second.
All right, let me ask before we get away from ourselves and neither of us mentions it. And because I'm not currently physically in the office to see shows of hands or anything else, and you have a terrible time with sharing this information, what was the rough numbers of the office poll this week?
Staff is now up to 31. We had 7 people who had seen or heard of the movie.
That's better than I would have thought.
Okay.
So it's 7 people had heard of it. How many had seen it?
4.
Okay. That's not
one
terrible.
Of which happened to be your mother.
Well, okay. But my mother is kind of like the exception that proves the rule in most of these because she gets brought along for the ride with most of the things that you and I do. So there's that.
Yes.
So, but even though, let's just say there's 31 staff members outside of you and me, so that gives us 29, and 3 people had seen it. That's at least 10%, which isn't bad for our group.
Which I think, if I remember correct, one of them was our most profound cinephile, which would be Kira, who I think when I talked with her had either taken classes on theater or on film history or had actually had a minor. So she's seen a lot. But yeah.
All right. For my scores on this one, I think this is an easy 5 among the industry. I think this film is revered. I think it's celebrated by historians, by film critics, by the history of the Oscars, et cetera, all down the line. And so I really don't have much of an argument to put up here because unless somebody's going to really push me that it's not a 5, I think that's a pretty one. And so we'll just move on. The issue I would have is maybe in the audience. I think this is a film that pretty much all cinephiles have probably seen, with some rare exceptions. Obviously, Jaylan hadn't seen it yet today. So congratulations on having your first viewing now of this fantastic movie that I love sharing with people. But with that being said, I just don't think it has the attachment, the name value, the name recognition that other famous films of the era necessarily have. I think Sunset Boulevard is probably the more famous film and the more publicly known, but is not necessarily, this one does not share in that aspect. And somewhat to its detriment. I think they are both two halves of the same whole to a lot of cinephiles, but not necessarily with the general broad audience. And so from that standpoint, where you have a movie that is seen mostly by cinephiles, but hasn't necessarily translated to the general population, I have that at a 3, so I have an 8 here.
I'm not far from you. For the industry, I have a 4.5.
Oh, you are going to fight me on this.
Yes, I am. Because really, it had no kick for almost anybody. Anne Baxter already had been nominated for Best Supporting Actress. I can't remember which film it was, a couple years before. The only thing she really did, she did a couple more films. She was in the 10 Commandments. She did a couple more films, okay? Then her career started to fizzle. It didn't produce or advance Mankiewicz's career as a director. He didn't do that many more films.
Yes, he did. He had a huge run in the 50s doing his own independent work, and then came back around to the studio system before he finally graded out in the early 60s. Yes, this is the height of his career, but he also, I can't remember if it's the year before or the year after, won Best Director a second time. So he was back-to-back Best Director winner.
So, but, Bette Davis was kind of like her.
This was her resurgence.
Yeah, but I can't give it the full 5 because of that.
Okay, and you're focusing on categories that we relegate to impact and significance, not to legacy. It appears on both AFI lists. I'm pretty sure it's on the Sight and Sound poll. It is likely to be on the CLP. It is something that is revered. I don't see where the argument is that it's somehow a point off yet, or a half point off, excuse me.
I know, and it's in Roger Ebert's one of his
Great
2
films
book on books. Yeah, which I've read both of.
All right, go to audience and circle back.
Well, audience, I'm in agreement at 3.
Okay, so your only discrepancy and your only point of argument is to somehow argue that this film that I think was number 10, excuse me, let me look here again here, was number 16 on the original AFI list and was number 28 on the second one, and say that it's not an appreciated number 5 overall legacy in the industry.
Okay.
You concede?
I concede.
All right, so we have 2 8s.
5 and 2, definitely.
Okay.
I don't feel like it has legacy with people. 5 definitely has industry, of course. But with people, they only know the memes. They don't know what it's about. They don't know anything about it. And I'm talking regular people, not cinephile. And even hardcore cinephiles, there are more cinephile-friendly, cinephile-specific films that you find all cinephiles talking about. So yeah, for me, it's 5 and 2.
All right, so then that is a 7.67 average between the 3 of us. Now, impact and significance, since I led off the last category, Dad, I will give you this here, but we have to define the category first. This is the initial 5 years after the film came out, so roughly 1950 to 1955. What is the impact and significance as felt between the industry and the audience generally? Again, 5 and 5 points apiece for a total of 10.
Industry, I have a 5. The number of Academy Award nominations, the number of or the reviews, etc., were just substantial and significant. The public loved the film. I think it was number 4 on the box office.
4 in the domestic box office, yes.
Yeah. So I'm at a 10.
You're at a 10?
Yep. 5 and 5.
So I have no argument against your 5 for the industry. I find it much more difficult to give a movie that finished only number 4 at the box office in a given year, in an era where the tracking on this wasn't necessarily as big. And I don't see the cultural cachet quite maybe the same way that you did. I ended up giving this a 3.5 there for an 8.5.
Ooh. Well, look at the 3 that were ahead of it. One was an animated film, Cinderella.
Sure.
Okay. And then there were 2 others that were, I want to say what was it? Smith or Swiss Family Robinson?
No.
What was it?
I mean, by some metrics, if you just Googled the top grossing films of the 1950s, it's listed at number 2 on IMDb, but by the way, Father of the Bride is one you're also thinking of.
Oh, yeah.
With Wisconsin's own Spencer Tracy.
Yes. Hard to find fault with a Spencer Tracy comedy.
King Solomon's Mines supposedly finished above it, but I mean, of the highest grossing films of that decade, there are some kind of odd ones that may or may not be above it. Like The Greatest Show on Earth might be the highest grossing film of that decade.
Okay.
Just saying. Like, well, by the time you get to 1954, the breaks start to accumulate for certain other films like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, The Caine Mutiny, White Christmas, A Star is Born. Those were apparently very big films of that era, but like nothing else really did that significant of work over the top of it. You had some of the epics, 10 Commandments, Around the World in 80 Days, Giant, Ben-Hur's in this list, Bridge on the River Kwai, Peyton Place. Some of those movies ended up being extraordinarily successful. Even North by Northwest grossed significantly more. I would say if you're looking at the totality of what the full gross of the entire decade is at this point, and maybe that's an unfair judgment since this is the beginning of the decade, maybe you look to the years just a couple prior to this, but Eve's 8.4 million in total receipts kind of puts it maybe in the middle tier or the next tier of the top 20 instead of the top 10. But again, if we're just judging that part of the impact on the culture based solely on a box office number, I don't think that does it justice. I just don't know what the cultural impact of this movie is. And so it's really hard for me to tell per se how it carried over to anything else. That's my issue. Like Ben-Hur, I think we can make a better judgment that would be ahead of it. And so I would say that's closer to an overall 10, given its place in the culture. But it's harder for me to say this had that same level of impact at the moment or in the moment that it came out.
I can go down some.
I'm not asking you to go down. I'm just trying to argue for my own spot because you said I was significantly off of where you were at.
Yeah. I don't think it's a 3.5. I think it's had much more cultural impact at the time. The some of the lines were highly quoted. Yeah,
it's fine. All right, so we have a 10 and we have an 8.5 on the board. Jaylan, what are you at?
Definitely 5 and 4. I feel like culturally significant at the time. It was high. I feel like this was a very back in the day culturally significant one. Of course, now I don't think so. And the industry, of course, this is a darling once and for all. And I feel like it still impacted all people involved in a way that elevated their status, even if they didn't go further from there. So yeah, 5 and 4.
All right, so that's a 9.17 average between the three of us. Let's move to novelty here. This is a category split between the originality of anything having to do with the movie. Usually it's about the subject material, but it could be about other things as well, and the execution on the movie. Now, I already indicated that this might be one of the best executed movies that I think we could ever talk about. So I have a 5 for that portion of it. As far as the originality, I don't think there was a movie quite like this about the industry up until this point. I think it was seminal. Part of the reason why Sunset Boulevard and All About Eve are somewhat twins and are talked about in relation so closely to each other is they have some overlapping themes, some overlapping subject material and concepts, and were really the first two that kind of explored this about the industry genre in this way. And so by that standpoint, I don't think it's the most original thing that I've ever seen, but it is really high. So I have that at a 4. I have a 9 here.
Honestly, I give it a 10. Like it's a great movie. Novelty, execution. It's also a great way of interpreting female relationships. And I don't think at the time they were that deep in analyzing that. So definitely a 10 for me.
She has a point on the female relationships that I guess I didn't appreciate. So I'll take a second to reconsider that, but go ahead, Dad.
Originality. I could not think of a film that dealt with the same concepts and really the male characters, other than Sanders, who's really, his character is more a plot device to show kind of the fallacy or the vulnerability even of somebody who manipulates and connives and such, how easy they can be taken down by somebody. It's predominantly a female film, which I don't think there were that many up until that point in time. And unlike Sunset Boulevard, which was a critique or a criticism of the film industry, and specifically how they dealt with the silent film stars, this went and did the little thing about, well, we're talking about this being the theater. We're really kind of implying that this is also the movie industry. And I know that Billy Wilder had a huge amount of criticism from other directors and other people in Hollywood with the concept of don't shit where you eat. That this film does not have, because it did not directly take on Hollywood. So I'm at a 10.
All right, I'll concede the point. We'll just make it a 10. So that is a 10 average between the three of us. Let's move to classicness. This is basically how well the film has aged or not. This oftentimes calls for a lot of nuance, and so we'll go to our nuanced correspondent, Dana.
Yes, thank you.
Reporting live.
Yes. The inhumanity of it all. Anyway.
Is the Hindenburg on fire?
Yes. Anyway, this to me is the perfect film as far as classicness, with one exception. That's why I couldn't give it a 10. When George Sanders slaps Anne Baxter.
Oh, good Lord.
I can't.
Fine, whatever, but
that's the one thing that you can't do. And, it's not allowed anymore. Otherwise, you could release this film now, and it would be just as prevalent now as it was in 1950.
You're very selective on when you bring this up. I'd like to defend you, but I brought it up last week when we talked about Rebel Without a Cause. You didn't even talk about it. So, fine, whatever. What was your number again?
9.5.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to go with my full 10. I think this is timeless. So, alone on that, on points, I would give it, I think this is actually one of, for as much as we complain about how few good female roles there were in this era of Hollywood and how little they had just these like great meaty parts, a lot of them went to characters or actresses like Bette Davis, who was able to take these lead actress roles and do so much more with them. This is one of those examples. I think it was also ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and the themes are somewhat universal. So I have this at a full 10.
10 all the way. Because for me, when you ask me, what is a classic movie? This fits my idea of what is a classic movie. This is a classic movie. So I always see it from my perspective. Like, I know that what Dana says, whenever I see a man slapping a woman, my blood boils and I feel like, yeah, thank God for modern cinema. So definitely this didn't age well, but then a lot of classic films that I consider classic didn't age well in certain aspects, but still, this is a classic in many things, and it's timeless. And of course, it will stand the test of time because, hello, how long ago was it made? So yeah, I'd give it a 10.
I would also argue that the moment where he slaps her, he's exerting his power over her, and that he's eventually won that battle between the two most manipulative characters in the entire movie. So it works within the broad theme of exactly what they're going for in that moment, that he's exerting his true power. And what is more representative of exerting your true power than standing over somebody and eventually physically assaulting them? So I think it actually works and does not detract from the movie in that moment, even though I know it bothers you because of this man of the people thing that you have going. So regardless, it's a 9.83 average between the three of us.
See, this is why people are more attracted to Dana, Thomas. If only you could play that game.
I'll just have to stay eternally single. Oh, well. I have other things in my life, I suppose. Anyway, let's move to rewatchability. This is a very subjective test for the most part. I have tried to remain somewhat objective in my findings of this movie. And other movies this season, going back to kind of what the original concept of this category was supposed to be. I certainly will allow both of you to take your own subjective numbers to this, but just to give you kind of a baseline of where I think the median public person would be on this movie, I think if you can get them past the initial point of saying, sit down, watch a black and white movie of people in rooms talking about the theater, you will get this person hooked. Because I think this movie actually is paced really well. I don't think it feels as long as it actually is, which is a little longer than most films of that era. And it's a little over 2 hours, but it definitely moves very quickly for me. And I don't think that there are really any great lulls in it. So by that extension, I don't feel that it feels its length or I was really bored in any major subsections. My issue is going to be just based on its general age and who I might be suggesting this to, that it might be getting them past that initial barrier. But once you can pierce that, I think this is a great movie to show people. And I think there's a lot to be gained from rewatching this multiple times over. Even though the reveals may not hit as hard for you, I still think that there's a lot of value that you can glean from this movie in subtle cues or things that are going on in the direction or how things are seen on film. And so I have this at a 6.5.
Out of 10? 6.5 out of 10?
Yep.
Wow. Oh my God.
Not my personal score, because my personal score would be much higher. But on an objective, trying to represent everybody perspective, I think that's fair.
I honestly added my personal score, which was 10. Which was 10, definitely. Because for me, I would watch this because it's a slice of life. It's a dissection of humanity. And these films are the most impactful, the most powerful. I hate when people treat the film like it's a whodunit. You know what I mean? Like, oh, but the reveal. Some films are not meant for reveals, guys. It's not an Agatha Christie novel. It's meant for, when you see a scene, people interacting, you realize, oh my God, this happened today, happened in the past, and will happen later. The way people interact with each other, backstab each other, hurt each other, manipulate each other, love each other, have a complex love-hate relationship with each other. This film has it all, so I gave it a 10.
Fair enough. Go ahead, Dad.
This is a film that I watch or have watched on a regular basis. I indicated about 10, 15 years ago. It's probably more like 10 years ago that I saw this film. And I've seen it 4 or 5 times. So I'm watching this film about every other year. I love the film. I love the acting in it. And so I'm at a 7.5 because it's beyond the normal, I should rewatch it. This is in the group of films that I do rewatch.
Well, that's pretty great because that gives us a very easy 8 average between the three of us, which I was hoping that you'd both bring me up on that particular category. Okay, so for audience score here, we had an 83% for Google users. Boo! And a 94% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us an 8.85. So to repeat the categories, we had a 7.67 for Legacy, a 9.17 for Impact and Significance, a full 10 for Novelty, a 9.83 for Classicness, an 8 for Rewatchability, and an 8.85 for Audience Score, giving us a final total of... Come on. Why won't it go?
Whoa.
And it's not playing. And I don't know why. God damn it. All right. Well, everybody's going to have to imagine the drum roll this week. 53.52. And currently placing it on our list between High Noon and Inside Out for number 16 on the list.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay.
For reference sake here, after our revisit of Sunset Boulevard, that moved to number 24. So both very high on the list.
I remember the Saw episode where it was like the bottom of the list, so I feel happy now.
So as usual, if you have any commentary for us, good or bad, you can certainly write us at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on any of our socials at GMotePodcast. on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle at GMote Podcast, or you can find us on RonnieDuncanStudios.com/GMote Podcast. Remaining questions for this one. I really don't have a ton, and I'm hoping we can kind of just run through these quickly, but how long does Eve's career go? She is roughly, I believe, 24 said to be in the film, and Margo is said to be about like 40, 42, somewhere in this range, so...
The cynical version? Until she gets too old.
Well,
which for Hollywood is... Or the stage, yeah. I mean, men can go forever, and women. I don't say it's right, but it's reality.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that's unfortunately, and I think it was earlier in this era than it even was like the 70s or the 80s.
And we talked about Reese Witherspoon. Reese Witherspoon started her own production company so she could find parts that she could produce for her own acting because she got to be in her mid to late 40s.
Right. Not everybody can be Meryl Streep.
Well, she made the transition to playing the Queen and various...
She never played the Queen.
Oh, that's right, she didn't.
She played Thatcher, who's a much more reprehensible character.
True.
Does Margo ever return to acting?
Yes. She'll find something she'll do. It'll probably be a more mature role. But yes.
I still think that the fact that she is friends with Lloyd helps her because he can write parts more specific to her age as opposed to trying to write her younger. I don't know how well they're going to do financially comparatively, but at least I would think that there's a guarantee of parts that would fit her a little bit better than what she had been doing.
She will re-enter the industry when she is divorced from Bill.
Who's being cynical now? All right, and then finally, what does Addison get from these relationships?
Really?
Well,
not to mention the power dynamic.
That feeling of power. It's so rewarding.
So is it just simply the chemical reaction, I guess? The satisfaction of having this kingmaker quality? Is that enough for him? There's a way in which that character can be seen very asexually.
Well, the sexuality of him is the fact that he has dominance.
Yeah.
Please, just the power. The way that you can manipulate people, you have people under your thumb, and you know that you can ruin people's lives, and this is why they are kind of enslaved to you, and they will do whatever you say. This is so rewarding. This is so sexy, even more than sex.
Any other remaining questions for either of you? All right. So I do want to thank our guest for being back with us for her third appearance on the show. 2 more for your hat. I don't know if we've ever sent a hat internationally, but we will have to try and figure that out.
I have an American address. So
you do?
It there? Yes, my cousins always receive all the gifts that get sent to me in the States.
Okay. I mean, we will have to figure out some of the international addresses as we do have an international guest audience as well as just general audience. Our super fan from Australia, shout out to you, that I believe we're in the process of trying to send a hat to. But yeah, that might be our
t-shirt.
First t-shirt. I'm sorry. My bad. I forgot which item of clothing or swag we were sending out, but regardless. But you will be back with us in December for Michael Mann's Heat.
Yes.
But before then, just go ahead and remind everybody again what you're working on and where they can find you.
I have a couple of interviews on video. They will be on Geek Vibes Nation and on my channel. I'm working on a review now, Killing Faith, for Geek Vibes Nation as well. You can find me on Twitter, Jaylan_Salah, on Instagram, Jaylan Salman, on Blue Sky, Jaylan Salah, and on the J Days YouTube channel.
And as always, our guest links will be available both in the show notes as well as on the website if you want to find anything about her there. Dad, any remaining thoughts for the week, quickly?
Very quickly, I am looking forward to Oscar season.
Okay, anything in particular? I know we talked about Springsteen last week.
Actually, it's going to be playing in my local theater.
Okay.
Which I'm so shocked, but
I'm not. Yes. A Complete Unknown played there last year. The musical biopics, and especially with larger stars, I find to be more relatable to the older demographic that is in current Wisconsin Rapids.
It's true. So
your peer group is very predictable, let's say, in that general geographic area.
Yeah.
But that being said, do you have anything else that you're really looking forward to?
I'm being hesitant to say what I'm looking forward to because I'm just not, there's a few films that I'm kind of going, maybe.
Okay.
So we will see.
I don't have any one major film that I guess I'm necessarily feeling like I need to see immediately. One of the few, and again, it's because it's a sequel and I like the first two, that I would love to catch in a theater, but it's going to be hard with the holiday that weekend because I believe it's released on Thanksgiving weekend. And it's only going to be in very select spots. So I won't be in Madison where I would normally try and catch it quick. But Wake Up Dead Man, the next Knives Out movie, I love all of those, and I'm very encouraged. I know that he's going to go and try and make something else other than the Knives Out movies for a little while. And so it may be a number of years before we get another one. But he's basically said as long as he and Daniel Craig want to do them, he will continue making them. And he hopes that somebody will give him the funding for those. I would assume, based on some of the critic reception that I've gotten, not that it's like overwhelmingly positive, but it's basically on par with the first two, that it's going to at least be entertaining. And if you enjoyed the first two as much as I did, you will be encouraged to see this yet again, even if it's a slightly different tone than the other two. And I think each one has had a slightly different tone from the other ones. Now, as far as other appearances and things, we were just on an episode of Front Row Classics with Brandon Davis that should be coming out here shortly, if it hasn't already by the time of the release of this episode. He interviewed us about the Cinema Legacy poll, and I thought we had a really great conversation, about an hour-long episode, so if you want to catch that there. I was recently on an episode that it doesn't look like, at least at the time of this recording, has quite come out yet, but on 12 Angry Men, which was my number one personal pick for the best movie of all time for my submission for the Cinema Legacy poll. And I've seen that one, the Clarissa Beckstead new podcast that is recently out. I think that was her 6th episode. I know that she's been on vacation, so I'm not sure when that episode exactly will come out. If it has already by the time that this episode airs, then great. If not, well, it's still upcoming and look out for that as well. Then Dana and I are wrapping up our month on the Revisionist Almanac here for October, where we're on the year for 1982. Voting, I believe, should be in the middle of things by the time this episode comes out. So certainly check out the Revisionist Almanac wherever you have your social media accounts to vote on those polls and see whether you agreed with Dana, myself, or Andrew on what we picked for that year. Otherwise, the last project that I just wanted to quickly update, the James Bond Watch-a-thon. I am about halfway through the last movie.
Okay.
So it's pretty much going to be predicated. I would imagine that I will have this done by the end of the week, and it's just waiting on you to get through the rest of them.
Okay.
Some of them will be easier to watch than others.
I know.
I think the first 4 Craig movies are pretty easy for you to watch. Die Another Day is something to put on while you're working on other stuff. And then you've got to get through... Frankly, it was the movie that I was dreading having to watch again because I still felt so betrayed from the theater, and that was No Time to Die. But so far, it hasn't been too bad going back to it this time. We'll see how I feel by the end of the film, but yeah. So how is the progress on that one there, Pop?
It's nowhere. I've been a little busy.
Fair enough.
So I'm trying to keep up with doing the watch for the show. I'm in a book club, so I'm trying to keep up with the book for that. And my nights are generally full. We record one night. I have one night I meet out with friends, and
so in other words, it's just not that important to you. Okay.
Well, when my Brewers are in the playoffs, and I have an open night where I
are they still in the playoffs?
Reading or watching. Well, they hopefully will be by the time this airs.
Well, that would mean they have to win the series, and they're already down 2-0. So
I know.
It is not likely.
I know. Now the Dodgers pitching is woke up.
Is possibly some of the best 2 starts back-to-back in a playoff series that I've ever seen. So, yeah, you're not going to beat that. But that looks like a good spot for us this week. Thank you for listening. I'm somebody now, Harry. Everybody likes me. Soon, millions of people will see me, and they'll all like me too. Next week, for our 285th episode, we welcome back Heather Stewart to discuss Requiem for a Dream from 2000, celebrating its 25th anniversary. Written and directed by Darren Aronofsky, with Hubert Selby Jr., cinematography by Matthew Libatique, music by Clint Mansell, starring Ellen Burstyn, Jared Leto, Jennifer Connelly, and Marlon Wayans. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at RonnieDuncanStudios.com or at GreatestAllTimeMoviePodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, or TikTok at the handle @GMoPodcast. Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ronnie Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.